how we oftentimes end up by mapping against business objectives. This particular, what you're seeing here is the sales funnel for B2B relationships. So again, our core belief is that social media drives relationships, drives engagement, needs to be value add. B2B is perfect for that. One of the things that people seem to be surprised at, when you talk about Dell, we obviously have a strong consumer company. We have a much stronger B2B company. Social media for Dell has more of an impact, significantly more of an impact on B2B than B2C. People are surprised when I say that. And by significantly, I'd say probably 7 times as much impact on our B2B market as we do on our B2C. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Our business-to-business business is all about creating relationships. It's all about adding value. It's all about generating the content that they need in order to make complex decisions. Social media is ideal for that. So what you're seeing up here is what we look at. Bottom line is awareness and consideration. And what you're seeing there is the size of the circles is the impact of the area, the size of the opportunity, and the difficulty in taking advantage of that opportunity. What we do with social and business to business is we identify where the hotspots are. Dell, even though we're a large company, also goes through periods where we're resource constrained either by people or by money. We still go through that same kind of thing that many other companies do, which means that we have to prioritize. Dell also needs to make sure that any investments that we're making are paying off. So that means KPIs and actual numbers are important. So when we go forward with a strategy, we are still on the hook to explain whether that strategy is working or not in that area and create a feedback loop in order to improve it going forward. And any decisions that we make on what network we come down on where we want to actually launch again, say Google Plus coming out now, say Tom Burke, which is growing tremendously, say the integration of StumbleUpon, which is growing tremendously, as you heard this morning. Whenever we make any decisions along those lines, we need to make sure that any investment that we do actually pays off. So to that end, we have an analytics team that does nothing but measure the impact of social on Dell across multiple business values. Now in B2B, you might think, well, B2B is not transactional. How can you say that B2B is actually impacting social media at Dell? Well, because we know that we have to make sure that our core social media strategy is indeed impactful, that means we've got to look at business objectives. We talk about awareness and consideration here, but how do you actually associate that to bottom line numbers? Our analytics team was able to come up with a way to map online social conversations to offline sales. We see correlation, we see impact, we see conversion, and we report on it. We report on it daily to show what that impact is. So we know very quickly whether or not our strategy is working. Again, this is cross-network. We know whether our strategy is working. We take that information back in and we create a feedback to make sure that whatever we're doing going forward, leveraging the functionality, integrating with the audience, and aligning with the business objectives, is being fed back into that network strategy. And each one of those networks plays a different role, as you would see on the earlier slides, of what it is, of how we reach out and what type of rules of engagement, what types of conversation, what types of audience we're engaging with. By creating the core element of social media strategy, We are at a place right now where we have the ability to go forward on any new platform, knowing what our infrastructure is going to be, knowing what our taxonomy is going to be, knowing who our audiences are, knowing how we want to engage with them, that we want to engage with them, and are prepared to hit the ground running. So when Google Plus finally does roll out their brand pages, we're going to be ready to hit that with the ability to have all of our business units on board with a core social media strategy to engage with people on Google Plus. The only thing that's missing in that particular variable, we know the audience, we know the business objectives, we don't know the functionality. So Google has been very hesitant as to saying what exactly they're going to be doing on brand pages. We know that they're going to have Hangouts, and there's going to be some elements of circles. But beyond that, that's a variable that we're going to have to take into account once they finally launch those pages. But because the other two prongs, the other two variables are known on our side, and the core social media strategy is known on our side, we believe that we'll be able to be positioned to take advantage of Google Plus's launches. We do this, what you're seeing up here, for every business unit in the company. And beyond the business units, we do this for HR, we do it for PR, we do it for communications as a whole, we do it for legal. We actually show the impact and create a strategy for every group at Dell, because we have seen through our analytics that every group at Dell is actually impacted by social media. With that, I'll leave. Sure.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead for 5 more minutes, you have it. So go ahead. Do you have any questions in the room or not? I'm running.
Hi. You mentioned that your analytics team has found a way to map online conversations and then tracing that back to offline sales happening. How do you normalize for the potential that people who were already going to make said purchase were then going onto social channels?
I think that's a great question. That's one of the reasons why I use the term correlation rather than causation. So the idea is that we know for a fact that if there are spikes in conversation from B2B channels, we know that there's going to be subsequent sales activity happening in relationship to it. We have not been able to determine specifically as to whether people who are already in the consideration mode just go to the social element as a final step. But what we do know is that a significant chunk of people who ultimately purchase from B2B are touched by social media. So whether there's an actual causation happening there, we know that it is an opportunity to drive conversations and engagement with the customer for B2B. So we know it's still vital to our strategy in that platform.
We'll continue having questions actually, so we can have the time to set up the computer for the next. So we have 5 more minutes. So Art, if you could come just to set up your computer, and we'll continue with Dell for a little bit. So I saw another hand somewhere. Here it is. Who had risen her? Yeah, you. Sorry.
Hi, from CA Technologies. So enterprise B2B, and I'm listening you talk about the coordination and the integration, which sounds sexy, but it's really hard to do. Especially we're in the same boat. A lot of different silos within the organization, and then sort of all the different platforms, and how do you really integrate that? I personally have a challenge finding a content hub that can work. Like awareness is almost there. I don't know if you've used them, but I'm wondering, how do you do that? And obviously not tremendous detail, but maybe the tools that you've kind of leaned towards using more.
You're talking about the tools that we use in order to coordinate across?
So multiple sort of types of content across multiple platforms,
yeah.
Right? So you could have You know, how are you able to go back and say, you know, security team, this is what we deliver to you through platforms?
Yeah, so we use a social media content management publishing system, that allows us to create a single calendar across B2B, across our primary platforms. So that means as content gets generated, they get added to the calendar, and we have roles and permission on that calendar. Some people only have the ability to push it to the calendar and push the content there, but then the people who actually leverage that content is a different layer of access. So they're the ones who manage the overall calendar. And they manage it from a global basis where we have other people who manage it from a country basis. So as content gets generated, awareness goes into the calendar as to what time that content is going to be available and what recommendations they have in order to publish that out. Okay? So really the key for us is the ability to have a social media content management publishing system.